Hey, I'm Ben Avery, and this is Strangers and Aliens. And today for Strangers and Aliens, we are talking about writing and some of the things that have been encouraging me personally in my current writing journey. Hey everyone, I'm Ben Avery. I am a comic book fan, a science fiction fan, a comic book writer, a science fiction writer. I'm a screenwriter. I've written for Zondervan. I've written for Marvel. I've written for myself, self-publishing. And I've also, I'm on the writing team for the upcoming Larry Boy movie that'll be in theaters, we're hoping. And so I love to write. I've loved to be a storyteller since I was old enough to tell stories. I've been writing stories since I was old enough to write. And recently I've been thinking about some of the things that have been kind of just encouraging me in my writing journey right now. And some of them are old things that have been with me for a long time. Some of them are new things, and they're things that have just shown up in the last couple of years. And so I wanted to kind of share them with you and maybe encourage you a little bit in your writer's journey as well. I have two categories that I want to talk about when I talk about the things that have been encouraging me as a writer. And on one side, you have learning, and on the other side, you have doing. And both of these, when I'm talking about these things, they have been not related to my big projects that I'm working on. I have a couple different big projects. One of them I mentioned is that Larry Boy thing. I have a big project that I'm working on where I'm editing another anthology, but they've come up because of my big projects in some ways. But the learning side is basically some of the books that I've been reading. I am not doing this video to sell you on a online writing course. That's nothing wrong with that. I don't do online writing courses. And the reason I don't do them is I can't afford them. I'm a self-publishing science fiction writer right now who is a pastor as well, living on a pastor's salary. And so I can't drop $1,000 to have someone help me guide me through the process of writing my novel. But there are some really fantastic books out there that I have found a lot of encouragement from and a lot of inspiration from, and also a lot of education from. And so I'm going to talk about those. But then there's the doing side. And the doing side, there's kind of three pieces to that. But we'll get to that when we get to it in just a moment. On the education side, the learning side, I just wanted to show you some books that I have found to be really helpful to me, especially recently. I had a friend once who said there are two types of people in this world. There is a story type of person, and there's the save the cat type of person. And he was a save the cat person. Now, the reason he said he was a save the cat person was because this book right here, what I appreciate about it is it gives you a guideline and it gives you a map and it gives you, now this is for screenplay structure, but they do have, this is the Save the Cat writes a novel. This is also really, really good. This I found to be very, very interesting and insightful. And it takes basically the insights from this book, Save the Cat, that Blake Snyder had, and then Jessica Brody takes it and she turned it into a class about novel writing from this, but then she has now, it's a book as well. And it was really good. And so this takes, like I said, it takes the structure from here and applies it to what you would be doing with a novel. But it's one of those things where people say, well, that's just, it just gives you the outline and it just tells you have to, especially in the screenplay structure, by this page you must have this done, and by this page you must do this, and on this page you must do that. And here she kind of does the same kind of thing, only talking about percentages and things like that. But the truth of it is, and this I would say for any of these books I'm about to talk about, is these are books that you should read and you should look at, you should study, and then you should, as you are writing, kind of forget about it. And then come back to those concepts and come back to those ideas. Now, the thing about these books is they're taking these concepts that are common sense. We all have a fundamental understanding of story, beginning, middle, end. And so these books kind of take that fundamental common sense and break it down to practical ideas and applications. And so with the Save the Cat series, there's a lot of the books in the Save the Cat series. I honestly believe that they are very, very helpful, but it doesn't mean you have to abide by them like they are canonical scripture. Okay. Story, on the other hand, is a lot more philosophical in some ways, and it's definitely a lot thicker in other ways. It still has diagrams and stuff in it, but I especially like in story the way it kind of broke down theme and identifying the value in your story, and what is the value that you're bringing across, but then also finding the negation of the value and the negation of the negation, and just the way it gets into a lot of, well, it says substance, structure, and style. Well, I like what it says about substance in story. But I would argue to my friend back then that there's a third person, and that is the writer's journey person. Now, the writer's journey is a book that I discovered years and years and years and years and years ago when I was just out of college. And I love this book because this one takes the hero's journey and breaks it down into how you use it to tell your story and to write your story. And it actually takes the concepts from Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces and breaks it down using movies as examples of how this breakdown of outline works. But this is one that I really appreciate. And then finally, there's a new one that just came out that I really liked. And this is one that... actually, I know the person who wrote it, but that is Brad Paquette's the novel Matrix. And this one, again, takes these just common sense things that you probably already know about story, or that you may have already read about in different formats, but it kind of takes those ideas and puts them and gives them its own spin, gives them Brad's own spin. And so this one is... I found this to be fun. I found it to be challenging, and I found it to be... There's some new insights in there, but it was also the way it just reminded me of old insights that I was already aware of, or that I'd already read about and studied and that sort of thing. And so kind of, again, like any book about writing, kind of takes these things and puts them all in one place. And the end goal is for you to be able to take it, synthesize it, and use it. But hopefully you're not necessarily thinking about it as you're doing it. Now, you might think about it when you're editing. You might think about it when you are, going back and rereading and something like that. But I would say it's like any kind of exercise. Say running, for example. You want to maybe figure out the best way that your body can run and the way that your legs are going to work best. And, you want to be careful about one knee or something like that. And so maybe you're wearing a knee brace or something when you're running. But you're not thinking about it when you're out there just running. Or hopefully you're not thinking about it too much, especially once you get started and get in a rhythm, get into a groove. And I would say that when you are a writer, you should never stop learning. And that's not just with writing, that's with anything. My grandpa used to say that the moment you get in, you should never step into a car, is that moment when you believe that you know everything about driving a car. And he's just saying, don't get cocky. Don't just say, I already know everything, I can't learn anything new, and I don't have to think about it anymore. You should always be learning and always be finding, always be curious. And that's where I would say, my encouragement to you is, as a writer, always be learning, always be expanding your knowledge base and look at different perspectives on writing. Speaking of, I would throw another 2 books into the mix, and that would be Stephen King's On Writing and Ray Bradbury's Zen and the Art of Writing. Those are both fantastic books I found to be inspiring and that, also encouraging and educational. Another book that I found to be very inspiring is Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist. And this is one that I just found it to be super encouraging because it's just asking you to be creative and giving you permission to be creative. And I really believe this. If you are a creative, this is one of those books that, especially if you're in a creative funk, this is going to encourage you and get you maybe out of that creative funk. I never read these 2, so I don't know about them. Now let's talk about the encouragement that I got on the doing side, okay? Because the doing side is where you have to be writing. And going back to that running thing, you have to run in order to run better, and the only way you're going to get better is by doing it. And the same with writing. And so the first encouragement I would throw out to you is the insight from that amazing piece of American cinema, Throw Mama from the Train. And I believe that it was Larry I believe is the character's name, who's the teacher. He teaches writing, and he teaches the class that Danny DeVito goes to. And he says, a writer writes always. At the end of the class, he says, remember, a writer writes always. And that is hopefully an encouragement to you. You got to just be writing. Just be doing it. Now, some people say you got to write this many words a day or this many pages a day and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying do that. I don't think that's going to work for everyone. I don't think that's going to encourage everyone. Some of you, when you have that kind of a structure, that becomes limiting and actually freezes the creativity and freezes the muscles and freezes the confidence that you might have in yourself. But as with any kind of creative arts, if you aren't doing it, it's not going to get done. And that would be the case with writing, of course. Always be writing. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, for you, it might be that you do have to set that rigid structure where I have to write this many words or write an hour every day or take, and do the Stephen King thing where all morning is just spent writing and then the rest of the day is spent doing these other things. And, that might be what it needs to be for you. It might also just be something where you say, I've got a week ahead of me and I really want to get this short story done, or I don't know what it means for you, but it does mean for me that if I'm not doing it, it's not going to happen. And I'll tell you right now, this has been a very discouraging season in my life. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but part of it is kind of being an almost empty nester in the sense that I have kids who are out of college and in college and a middle schooler. And so I'm not going to be a true empty nester for a while, and there's other things that go on just in life. You have stuff that happens in life. And there's certain things I look at and I'm like, life has not been better for me when I look at certain areas of my life, but this season of my life has been a discouraging season. And it's been very difficult for me to find the space in my brain to be creative. And so I've had to force myself to do that. And so there are two more things I want to share with you that have helped me force myself to be creative. And they are both writing challenges, for lack of a better term. One of them is from Clean Fiction magazine, and they do a contest with every issue of their magazine. And I believe in this kind of thing so much that Strangers and Aliens, the podcast, has sponsored this writing contest for I don't know how many times in a row now. But I've actually told her, hey, just count on me. Just count on me because I believe in what you're doing. First of all, I'm just going to say Clean Fiction magazine is an amazing resource for you to be able to find good, clean fiction. Some of it is spiritual, some of it is not, but there are reviews and there are short stories and there are articles and things like that. But again, in some ways encouraging by getting the word out for some of you who you may not know what is even out there. Well, this magazine exists to help you find stuff, but it also exists to help the word get out about small press books, self-published books, and large publisher books. But so there's that side of things. But then there's this contest, and they actually do a couple contests. One is a cover contest where the one time I entered the cover contest, and that was with my book, Ghosts of the Future. Read it, buy it, enjoy it, love it, whatever. I love this cover so much. I really thought it should have won. I am obviously biased, but Ghosts of the Future. I mean, and I'm not good at self-promotion. I need to get better. There's a YouTuber I watch who he starts every video just saying, hey, I'm a best-selling writer, blah, 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 blah. This is my book, and here's my topic. And I've been trying to decide, can I do that? And I've tried to do things in a natural way, but I really find that the natural way that I self-promote is in a self-depreciating kind of a way. But yeah, this is my book, Ghosts of the Future. It's my novel. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, I should have won the cover contest. But the other contest that they do, and I love this, is she has a picture that she'll put, and then the prompt is the same for every single entry into this contest, and that is Through the Window I Saw. And so I've been sponsoring this contest, like I said, for a long while. I don't always do the prompts, and when I do, I don't send them into the contest because there's that whole conflict of interest. I mean, I'm sponsoring the contest. How would it look if I won? That's not to say I'm going to win. I'm just saying if I were to win, I feel like I would just feel weird about it. And so that's why I have not actually entered any of the stories that I've written from the prompt into the contest. But I've sponsored the contest, and sometimes I use the prompt, especially if the picture is really, just inspires my imagination. But the other website that I have been doing, and this has been a monthly thing, is Deadlines for Writers. And I heartily endorse this website. It is basically a great big giant writers group. It does mean, because it's so great big and giant, that you're not going to get a lot of feedback from the same people. And so there's not going to be a lot of growth where they can see, they suggested this, and then in the next one you did that, and how did it work for you? But it is a great big giant writers group. You cannot access the stories on that website that people have worked on unless you are a part of it, unless you are doing the challenge. And they have two free challenges that they do. And it's a monthly poem, a monthly short story, and then there's also a monthly scene where you're working on a novel and doing a scene every month. And I actually don't know much about that one because that one is a paid challenge. But the short story challenge, I don't know about the poetry one because I'm not doing that, but the short story challenge I've been doing for the last few months, and I have been enjoying it so much. They give you one word. I think the last one that we just did was the word cheers. No, it was Faded Dreams was the last one. 2 ones before was Cheers, but it was Faded Dreams. And so I wrote a story about a time traveler who went back and was looking at himself playing on the porch, doing a Rubik's Cube, and just thinking about what he dreamed when he was that kid and how he felt like he was going to change the world. And it didn't happen the way he thought it was going to happen. But another time traveler who has been sent back to encourage him goes and talks to him and says, don't create a paradox, man. Don't do it. It's not good for the environment. That's not what they actually say. But anyway, that's a story I would have never written without that prompt. It's a story that I would never have thought to write without that prompt. And I actually have now a cycle of stories I'm calling them the Gatekeeper cycle. And it's about this time traveling organization called the Gatekeepers, who basically go to important moments in history and try and keep it safe from being changed by time travelers. And the first one that I wrote was actually from a contest a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. No, a year and a half ago. And it was a short story. These are all micro short stories, as far as like they're anywhere from like 500 words to 2,000 words or whatever. I did this for a paid contest that I paid to be a part of, and it was fun and it was nice. I paid, I don't know, $15 or whatever, $20. And what did I get out of it? I got a pretty decent short story about this gatekeeper concept for time travelers, where they go to important moments in time, and while they're there, they are there to kind of corral all the time travelers who are there to witness this important moment in time into a place where they're not going to interfere. And then there's also a little bit more of a strong arm presence when there's a moment in time that people might be tempted to change or to interfere. And so, but they're time guardians. They're not quite time cops, but they are time guardians. And in the process of doing these, so I did that first one for that contest, and then the first prompt that I did with Deadlines for Writers ended up being the second story in that Gatekeeper cycle, and then the third and the fourth and the fifth, and now I'm working on the sixth story in the Gatekeeper cycle. They're all short. They're very short, and then what you do is you post it to the website on a specific day. I believe it's the second Wednesday of every month or something like that. But anyway, it's a specific day. You have a 24-hour period where you can post the story, and then you comment on 4 other stories that have been written with that same prompt, and you give your feedback on them, and then 4 people at least are going to read your story, comment on it, and you're going to get feedback from 4 different people about your story. And it has been just one of the one of the most fun creative things I've done in a long while, especially because out of this, I'm getting a handful of stories that I'm calling it a cycle because it's not a novel. And they're all written from like different perspectives, but they all take place in the same universe, and they use the same language, and they're also hopefully standalone because I don't want someone who's reading it from that website to get lost because they don't know what a gatekeeper is, or they don't know who Ryan is, or Johan, or Danita. And so it's kind of, every story is kind of its own fresh episode. And I've just really been enjoying using that website to spark my creativity and jumpstart my creativity for other bigger projects that I'm working on. So all that to say, I hope that I've been a little bit of encouragement to you as a writer. I want to encourage you that a writer writes always, but I also want to encourage you to remember, we serve a creative God. That's something that comes from the beginning of our audio podcast. Every episode has Dr. Jace. Now, actually, it used to be every episode. I can't remember if I kept that in when I shortened the opening, but we serve a creative God. He created the universe. We serve a Lord and Savior who was also a storyteller. And so these are, I believe, part of the divine spark within us. I think that one of the things that separates us from the animals is the ability to tell a narrative story and the ability to understand not just cause and effect, not just consequence, not just pleasure and pain and consequence, but the ability to gain understanding from story, the ability to learn from story, to be encouraged and inspired from story, to be warned against something by story, to learn from metaphor and learn from allegory, and to just be able to enjoy a good story as well. And that is something that I believe is part of, this is my interpretation, this has nothing to do with any kind of theological thing, so I may be way off, it's just my thought, but I believe that when God said, let us create man in our own image, that was part of it. Is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and yeah. So all that just kind of, now I've jumbled up a whole bunch of thoughts into one, but be encouraged. If you are a writer, write. Just do it. And if you don't have something that's pushing you to be creative, read a book like this. Find a good challenge. Find a book that has good story prompts if you don't want to wait and do things online. But push yourself a little bit too. Push yourself just a little bit further to learn and to do. And so, until next time, I'm Ben. This is Strangers and Aliens. Godspeed.